Hey, Howard Jacobson here. Welcome to today's Plant Yourself podcast. A quick reminder, this podcast is free for everyone and supported by patrons. So if you would like to find out about becoming a patron of the show and helping us out, helping defray the cost, helping to spread the message, you can do so at plantyourself.com/gift. Thanks so much and enjoy today's episode. Hey, welcome to Plant Yourself. I'm your host, Howard Jacobson. Today I'm talking with Meryl Fury. Meryl is a registered nurse, and she's also the CEO of the plant-based nutrition movement. And she's a fierce advocate for justice and sanity in a world which is currently lacking both. So we talk about how she went vegetarian at the age of 15 in her attempt to help her family make ends meet during economic troubling times. And her mother was like, no, you can't do that. You have to eat meat to be healthy. And Meryl refused. And she left the meat on the plate. And then when her mother retaliated by making a meat sauce, she spat out the sauce that was coating her pasta. And she won. She got to stay vegetarian. She later became vegan for reasons of health, environment, animal ethics, and all that. And she is still outlasting things. Just as she outlasted her mother's insistence on eating meat 35 years ago, she's still striving to outlast the broken food and healthcare systems, particularly the ones that disproportionately harm people of color. And we had a long and far-ranging and fun conversation. Don't miss the end where we talk about her favorite music picks, some of which are also mine. And it's just a really interesting, fun, lively conversation. And you can catch the video also at plantyourself.com/429. Before we get there, two quick announcements. One is the WellStart Health Coach training begins first week in October. If you are interested in becoming a health coach or becoming a more proficient health coach with more tools in your toolkit. Specifically, I teach a reliable process for helping your clients get traction on the results that matter to them most in their health and in their lives. Or if you are a lifestyle medicine professional, an MD, an RN, a PT, an RD, and part of what makes you good is getting people to do what you tell them to do, then this is a really important, valuable skill set. And if you're interested, check it out, wellstartcoach.com. It's a lot less money than most other coaching programs. It's 13 weeks of weekly classes, which is recorded lectures, and then live practicum calls where we debrief your homework practice, and we also practice coaching each other. You can go to wellstartcoach.com and you can see some of the reactions of people who've been through the program. We've had about 100 so far, and this is another run which will take us into January of 2021. Yay, 2021, I hope. So if you're interested, again, wellstartcoach.com, read about it. And if you're interested, you can apply for an enrollment interview with me in which we'll figure out whether it's a good fit or not. Second thing is, I want to remind you that this podcast does not take advertising, and I tend not to do any sort of affiliate links, so my guests don't pay me for the privilege of appearing and pitching their programs and products on this podcast. And there are plenty of expenses associated with it, not least of which is my time on a weekly basis, which could be anywhere from 5 to 10 hours, to hosting costs, to software, to hardware upgrades, and I would love your help. So if you are a longtime listener or a new listener who has made this a part of your life and you appreciate the mission of what I'm trying to accomplish and you'd like to become a patron, either with a one-time gift or an ongoing monthly contribution, that would really, really help out. And you can do so at plantyourself.com/gift. Remember, this podcast is free for everyone, and it's paid for by those who can afford it. So if you're one of those people, I would really appreciate your help. All right, let's get to today's conversation. Without further ado, Meryl Fury, welcome to the Plant Yourself podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Howard. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I love the background. It's like, looks like distressed wood. Tell me, where are you?
I am on my back porch. I have the absolute privilege and joy of living in a restored barn. So this is the siding with that, and my husband built the barn. So yeah,
Wow.
This is the outside back porch that I'm on.
See, my parents used to accuse me of living in a barn, but it wasn't a compliment.
Right, they were asking you, right? Not so much, right? Yeah, no, we have that joke. You live in a barn.
Wow, it looks
Close
beautiful.
It's beautiful. It is a beautiful space. You did a great job on it.
Hey. And where is that? Where do you live?
I live in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is about halfway between Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Chicago, Illinois. I'm kind of like right on the state line between Chicago and, between Illinois and Wisconsin.
Gotcha. And we're talking today because you are the CEO, right?
Yes, president and CEO.
Of an impressive organization that has had to hit the brakes hard and reinvent itself. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do? Okay,
so I am president and CEO of the Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, which is a nonprofit 501c3 that is, up till now, has been really housed or sort of located in the Chicagoland area. But since the whole coronavirus COVID thing, we, like you said, had to hit the brakes pretty hard. And we've moved pretty much to completely online. In fact, we've put everything, all of our programs kind of on hold while we reinvented ourselves. Our strength, we were only 2 years old. And let me give you a little history. The person who founded the organization is a cardiologist who was based here in the Chicagoland area. His name is Dr. Stephen Loam. And he created the organization as a way to actually help people heal from heart disease. He's an interventional cardiologist, and he certainly believes in the power of appropriate medicine, appropriate interventions, therapies, standard sort of American medical treatments for heart disease, but was pretty clear that a lot of the standard treatments don't actually heal the human heart. And so he started this nonprofit as a way to get the word out without ruffling the feathers of the medical facilities where he was working.
And this was he wasn't telling them, or there was enough of a firewall between his public activism and his professional work? How does this not ruffle feathers?
I think it was a little bit of a tap dance that he had to do, sort of on the line and back and forth over the line. He did once tell me a story about how, so he came from a family of super heavyweight people. His mother, father, immediate family were up in the 300-pound range each, very large people. And he himself was beginning to tip the scales in a way a little bit heavier than he wanted to. Now, I have a dog who insists on barking when I'm on the phone.
You know what? This is pandemic time. You could have the Rockettes go behind you, and I wouldn't blink an eye anymore.
You're right. We're in quarantine still. Right. Anyway,
maybe your dog will make an appearance, and everyone can go, "Oh."
He may. It's absolutely 100% predictable that he's going to do that. Anyway, there he goes. So anyway, by the time that Dr. Loam went through medical school, and he had this sort of aha moment about how interventional cardiology is certainly appropriate and life-saving in so many situations, prevention is a whole nother thing, right? And reversal of disease is a whole nother thing. And he started really delving into that and found whole food plant-based as, lifestyle as a way to do that. And he and a group of his colleagues, I believe, decided, you know what, hold on one second. Let me just let the four-legged back in the house. Hold on.
Sure.
That might be a good thing to edit out. Anyway, So he and a group of his colleagues, also cardiologists, decided, okay, this is the way, this is the thing. We're going to start teaching our patients this. We're going to start living this. We're going to walk the walk. We're going to talk the talk, and we're going to heal the world, which is what most medical people really want to do, right? We go into it because we want to heal people. And they started doing this work and teaching their patients. And at one point, I don't know if it was 6-8 months into it, a year into it, I don't really know what the time frame was, but it wasn't long, when one of his colleagues got called into the chief medical officer's office for the hospital system where they worked. And the colleague was thinking, oh yeah, we've been knocking this out of the park. Our interventions are down. Our, incidents of different problems are down. We're doing less coronary artery bypass grafts. We're doing less echoes. We're doing less stents. We're doing all that. Man, we're doing it. We're taking care of our people, So he's like ready, goes into the chief medical officer's office, and he sits down in the chair, and, he's like ready to get his props, like bring me the love. And the CMO says, so yeah, it looks like you guys are changed up something in your protocols there. What's going on? I see your numbers are dropping. And the doctor says, yeah, isn't it great? We are knocking it out of the park. We're taking care of our patients. This is what we went to school for. And the CMO said, yeah, not really. It's a problem. We hired you to bring in a certain amount of money. And if you're not doing these procedures and treatments and open heart surgeries, we do not have the finances to maintain this state-of-the-art facility. And beyond that, we don't have the finances to pay for the staff. We can't make any of our ends meet.
Now, you said it was the chief medical officer. Are you sure you didn't mean the chief financial officer?
No, it was the
that
CMO.
wasn't a
misstatement. No, sadly. So the doctor who was there, like, all of a sudden had that, like, eye-opening moment, jaw-dropping moment where he was like, oh my gosh, well, we have to do something, we can't just give up. I mean, I have to be gainfully employed.
So was he told you have to go back to the old way, or else you can't stay
basically what he was
here?
told was, if you don't bring in your share of the income, you'll have to find someplace else to work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the chief, I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the chief medical officer. So, like, I understand if this is Dunder Mifflin and, like, the sales of paper are down, like, the purpose of a company is to sell stuff. Was there, and as you said earlier, like, doctors go into medicine to heal people. Like, what happened to his soul or his brain that he wasn't able to see the irony, the ridiculousness, the heinousness of what had happened to his calculus?
Well, I can't really speak for what he was thinking or feeling at the time, but I'm a registered nurse too. And I've spent a lot of time in the medical environment. The medical facility, or I'll say the medical industry in the United States, is the only place I can speak about. That's the only place I've worked this way. It's a business. That's what it is. We don't have socialized medicine here. We have fee for service. And fee for service means, patients come in, somebody pays. That's how the clinic stays open. That's how the bills get paid. That's how the overhead gets covered. It's quite a conundrum to be a medical professional and realize that people are going to only, I don't even know how to say that, people can only get so well before it starts to impact the financial health of the facility.
Yeah, but that's like saying, and I know we're on the same side here, but I'm feeling very cranky about this.
Okay, go ahead.
I just want to vent, if that's all right. If I'm looking for a car, I go to Consumer Reports and I see, like, which ones last the longest and I buy based on quality, why, if medicine isn't a business, why don't we make decisions based on outcomes and value-based care and quality as opposed to just, it's like, I don't want the car that weighs the most, like the most material that went into it. I want the car that's going to last and be safe and be comfortable. Where's the disconnect?
Well, I think, you're right. This is the conundrum we find ourselves in all the time. This is part of why we fight this ongoing rhetoric, this never solved problem of the continually spiraling cost of healthcare in America. This is part of it, because there's a financial requirement. The American medical industry hires people. People need ever increasing pay. There's ever increasing overhead. And then, never mind. Howard, do you really want to talk about all this?
I don't know.
This is huge.
I mean, you seem to have a very privileged position to understand it from both sides.
Yes,
so
I do.
I'm just curious, because what you said is also true of Volvo and Toyota and Acura and right.
Yeah, the only challenge here is that, we're dealing with human health. Okay, so for instance, let's take it back to food, right?
Okay.
So we know that let's say the USDA is the group or the entity, the agency, association, right, that is responsible for determining which foods kind of flow into our food supply in lots of ways, right? We also know that the USDA has like a dual purpose. It's to decide what foods that the American public is able to get a hold of. And there's, lots of impact on that. There's lots of different facets of that. But they also are responsible for maintaining the health of the agricultural community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
that the farmers have place to sell their products. And a lot of that, is not only vegetables and fruits, it's animal products, right?
Right.
We know that it's the USDA that created the food pyramid, right? You can do this research. You can find this information. I'm sure you know all this stuff already, but, we know that the food pyramid was somehow truly, seriously misconstrued so that, the bottom was grains and white and rich grain was okay as the major part of the American diet for the longest time. That was the base of the triangle, right? Mm-hmm. And at the tops, then there's milk and there's meat, and somewhere up here there's, fruits and vegetables, right? That was not truly based on science. That had a lot to do with lobbying and stuff that happened to bring that forward to the USDA. So, our kind of the way I look at it is, sadly, the health of the American population has been up for sale or up to the highest bidder for a long time. Mm. And that's gotten us where we are, So it's really okay when you look at the way things actually happen, not like it's okay morally or ethically, but it's okay because that's the way it goes. That in low-income communities, let's say, that there's no grocery store where a person can buy fresh food, let's say. It could be like that, right? There could be a total food desert, and the only thing available is the Quick Trip, which is attached to the grocery store. Oh, and every fast food restaurant known to man, right?
Mm-hmm. But the medical establishment still makes money off of poor people, doesn't it?
Well, yes. No, I mean, yeah. So let's say it's a poor person with some sort of state insurance.
Hmm.
The medical establishment still gets paid by the state insurance.
Uh-huh. And where does that money come from?
Those are tax dollars.
Okay. So I'm trying, I mean, I know you know this and I know it, but I'm still connecting dots
Yeah, go ahead.
around, if like a hospital system that was rationally based would start a supermarket, right? With a giant produce section and a teeny everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's not a part of the model, I'm afraid.
Right. So okay. So we've painted the picture. I think I'm getting a sense of where you have interacted with it. How did you get involved with PBNM, with plant-based nutrition movement, and what can it do in the face of? One question at a time. How did you get involved? Before I ask you how you swing the hammer, let's meet the hammer.
Okay. So how I got involved. Okay. So I'm a registered nurse and I've been in public health for close to 30 years. Right. So I've always been attracted to working with the most vulnerable populations, right? Just for way of definition, vulnerable populations are single moms, undocumented people here from other countries, elderly, homeless, drug addicted or abusing, those populations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always kind of did home visits and worked in clinics, and that's just my passion, is to see the people who get the least amount of care get at least decent care, get something they could count on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after years and years of doing that and seeing, and actually I started climbing the corporate ladder. I started out as a home visit nurse and then moved into management. I got my master's and all that fun stuff. And it became really super clear that there's no strong commitment to actually getting people to really heal. And the little clinic that I worked in, one of them was really, really pretty progressive. Great. Really, we had a little garden in the backyard and people would come and work vegetables. And okay, so we're still in Illinois and Wisconsin. The growing season's not real long up here, right? But when the weather was nice, like it is now, we would have tomatoes and zucchini and jalapenos and, all kinds of fun stuff. I'm growing out in the yard, and we'd have cooking classes, and we had an agreement with a local health facility, a health club, and the patients could go over there and work out. And I mean, that was really a great, great thing. And the patients still need to come back every 3 months, which is a standard diabetes protocol, let's say. This is a diabetes clinic. And every 3 months, we could count on a certain income from these people, and we would do a certain testing. And it's not like it's all sort of sinister and murky and bad. It's not really, I don't want to paint it as like there's this ulterior motive going on. That's the protocol. That's what you do, right? That's what's accepted. But anyway, over time, I just got really disenchanted with that whole thing. People were not.
I assume that one thing you saw was nobody's need for meds ever went down.
Correct.
They either stayed the same or went up, and eventually everybody's went up.
Pretty much. It was pretty much that way, yes. Very hard to watch, and even harder to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And I have, like, all my life, since I was 15, I have been on the road to like being completely vegan, whole food, plant-based. It started when I was really young.
Oh, what happened?
What
happened to you?
When I was 15 or lately?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we digress. So when I was 15, that was 1975. So you guys can calculate. I'm coming up on 60 years old now. When I was 15, the price of meat went up like drastically, super high. I don't even know what was going on back then that made it like that. I don't know, but the price of beef went up really high, I remember. And my mother, who was trained and working as a gym teacher, understood the importance of nutrition. She had learned that in college, and she took her job very seriously. She was a great mom. And when the price of beef went up like that, which of course dragged with it the price of pork and the price of chicken and the price of everything else went up, right? She would complain that she couldn't afford to put 3 square meals on the table every day. And back then, 3 squares was, a meat, a starch, milk, and a vegetable. Fruit was extraneous, I believe, back then, right? And she would complain. And my mom was so important to me. She was like the center of my world. I would do anything to keep her comfortable and calm. She was a great friend. And I remember her going through that and her complaining about that for weeks. And finally, one of my friends and I decided we would just stop eating meat. And that would make it easier on our moms. They wouldn't have to worry about buying X number of meat-based meals a week because we would have, bowed out of that whole equation. And I remember I came home from visiting this same friend and I said, Mom, guess what? Lori and I decided we are not going to eat meat anymore. And that should make it easier on you and her mom. You don't have to buy meat for us. And my mom lost it. No, you have to eat meat. You have to, because that's how you stay strong. That's how you will grow big. That's how you will, keep your muscles healthy. You have to eat meat, and you don't worry about the grocery budget. I buy the groceries. Your dad is working. We got this, right? But I'd already made the decision. I'd already made a commitment with my friend. And at that point, I was 15. I was just going to be hard-headed about it. Right. So I think it was that night she made spaghetti and meatballs, she was a great, great, great cook. And she made spaghetti and meatballs, which was a favorite. I brought her my plate. She served the spaghetti and the sauce and 2 meatballs. And I said, but I'm not eating meatballs. And she said, take your plate and sit down. So I took the plate. I sat down. And I kind of pushed the meatballs off to the side, and I ate the pasta and the sauce. White pasta, by the way, right? That's what they had back then. Right? So my mother was like, she's going to humor me. She didn't figure it would last long. She's going to outlast me on that one. So the next couple days, same thing. She's putting meat on the plate. I'm not eating it. She's putting it on. I'm not eating it. Finally, she decided that she was going to make spaghetti with meat sauce. And that way I'd have to eat it, right? So I go up to the, stove. I hand her my plate. She puts the pasta. She puts the meat sauce. And I look at it like, you never make meat sauce. What is going on here? I said, I'm not eating meat, right? And she said, take your plate and sit down. I took my plate and sit down. Now, this is a little bit disgusting, but this is how I was when I was 15. I probably only matured deeper into myself since then, but I took the plate, I spun up the first, fork full of spaghetti, and I put it in my mouth, and I spit out every piece of meat back on the plate, which is pretty disgusting to sit at a dinner table with somebody doing that, and that pretty much stopped her from putting meat on my plate ever since. And I just...
So did you, at that point, you said she was really into nutrition. Did you have nutritional arguments in 1975?
Well, not so much, because I really didn't have a grasp on what it was. For me, it was more of I'm taking care of you, Mom. You don't have to panic about feeding me meat because I don't need to eat it. Mm-hmm. Right? I didn't really know anything about amino acids or proteins or macronutrients back then. What are micronutrients? I don't know. Vitamin A, what is that? Iron? I don't know. I don't know. I was just being 15. And then over years, I just kept that up. So, eventually I stopped eating chicken and fish as well. I stopped eating dairy products that was the result of developing an allergy or coming to understand that I had an allergy, which I probably had my whole life. And, you know, eventually stopping eating soy because I developed an allergy to that. So, you know, over years, my diet just slowly came to what it is now.
Those first months, was it your mother's opposition that kept you going? You were just going to be stubborn about it? Or were you feeling better? Or
I think I was just, you know, defiant.
So it took you a long time.
I can't remember really feeling any differently.
Yeah. So it took you a while to come up with actual rationales.
Yeah, that's an adult thing. By the time I got to be, I'd say, you know, 18, 19, I'd done a lot of reading by then. That was only 3-4 years, right? But I'd read books like Dick Gregory's Cooking. What's it called? Cooking for Folks Who Eat, I believe it was.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about Dick Gregory for folks who aren't familiar with?
Wow. Okay, not a lot because I was a baby back then. But Dick Gregory in the 70s was a comedian. I believe in the 70s. I actually have the book upstairs. I just went on Amazon and bought a copy of his book again to replace the one that I had that got destroyed. But he was a comedian, an African-American comedian, was very well respected. And he was also a political activist, as just about any African-American who was alive and breathing back in the late 60s and mid 70s was somehow politically active for the most part. And at some point, we should go upstairs and get the book. But at some point, he came to a realization that food was really super important to the health of people. And he changed his way of eating. You know, he moved away from the Southern Black cuisine, which, of course, came out of slavery, a lot of it. And, you know, as we know, slaves were not given healthy food at all. That was not the deal. So he moved away from that style of eating and went completely into vegetarian and vegan eating. And he took up running marathons and doing all kinds of things to improve his health and to spread the word of what was called vegetarianism back then. That whole food plant-based was not a thing.
Right. But I mean, to some extent, like his comedy, unlike a lot of other Black comedians, was about civil rights. Very pointedly, right? Like he was an activist in his comedy. So for him to talk about vegetarianism, I'm wondering if that was, you know, in some ways a really salient justification, like all the connections he was making about hierarchy, for example.
No, I believe it was. And African American people were having very much the same illnesses then as we have now, right? That hasn't changed much. I think he just used his comedy and his stage, right, his platform to deliver his message. And food happened to be a part of empowering the African American community at that time, one way of doing that.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's fast forward. So you were vegetarian turning vegan while you were studying nursing and working as a nurse. Did that impact your professional practice, or did you have sort of a bifurcation between, you know, what you were doing personally and like the connection between, because Dick Gregory wasn't a scientist,
correct?
And you know, and there wasn't that much science available to lay people back then. Like, you know, you learned how to be a nurse and how to take care of people with chronic illnesses, and you were becoming vegan. When did those intersect?
Probably always. So repeatedly and always. So when I first went to nursing school, well, let's even say before I went to nursing school, my big heart's desire was to be a doctor of natural medicine. That was just a drive I had. I studied herbology. I studied anatomy and physiology and nutrition. I'd taken all the like prerequisites for nursing without actually meaning to, because I was just interested in human health. And I really have always believed since, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, probably started when I was 16, if I'm clear in my timeline. I've always believed that plants held cures. You know, herbology is a super wonderful, powerful science, right? And I even remember further back when I was a kid, my grandmother, my father's mother, who I did not have a great relationship, but the times that we were, you know, okay with each other was when she was out showing me herbs. She would take me out. We had a woods behind our house, and she would take me out and show me, okay, this is blackberry. This is what those leaves for. This is sassafras. This is the only tree that has 3 leaves that have 3 different shapes. You know, she would show me things like that. This is
where
peppermint.
was that?
Huh?
Where was that?
This was in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey.
Oh, whereabouts?
Plainfield.
Oh, I'm from South Orange.
Okay. Yes.
I used to get my ass handed to me at the track in Plainfield.
My mother taught that class.
Oh my God. I did not know there were so many varieties of last place.
Oh, that's so funny.
Until I ran winter track and competed. I went to Columbia High School.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so
yeah, that was my mother's stomping ground as a gym teacher.
huh.
Yeah. So I grew up understanding the power of plants, right, medicinally, and so as I got older and I started studying stuff in college, and, you know, like I said, I was doing all these sort of prerequisites because I just really appreciated and loved human health and allied health sciences, it was called. And then one day, I'll never forget that day, one of the nursing school counselors came up to me and said, I'd like to see you in my office tomorrow at noon. And I was like, okay, I don't really know you, but okay, I'll meet you. So I went to her office and she said, so I've been looking at your records and I see that you're taking all of the prerequisites for nursing. There will be a nursing shortage in the next 3 to 10 years or whatever something like that. And you ought to go into nursing. And I said, well, what if I don't want to be a nurse? She said, I've looked at I know what's going on in your life. And I was having some challenges. I was a single mom, just had a baby at that time. And she said, you're going to need a way to provide for your baby. And nursing is a good way to do it. I see that you like all these allied health sciences. I was in Texas at that time, at the University of Texas in San Antonio. And she said, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to the community college and you're going to take statistics with this instructor. You will get an A in that course. After that, she was something. She said, after that, you will apply to the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio. You'll get accepted. You'll take this course, this course, this course, and this course. It'll take you 2 years. You'll have your bachelor's and you'll be able to provide for your child for the rest of your life. And I just said,
wow. That sounds like you met like a mystic who read a crystal ball.
Kind of like. She was amazing. And that's what I did. I did not fight her. I just was like, well, okay then.
You seem very certain. So
That's right. You must know more than I do. So I went and that's what I did. And nursing has certainly provided me a fine living. Certainly. Great education, fine living. But as, personally, as you said, did I have to bifurcate or how did that work so that I wasn't having this misalignment in my life? And for quite some time, there was a bifurcation. So I would talk to the patients along one line. Hey, eating this way, having this illness, this is the, how that works, blah, blah, blah. And on the other side, the way I carried myself was, and I would say to my patients, now, I don't eat like that. I'm heavy on the vegetable matter, heavy on vegetables, fruits, whole grains. That's what I would do. but the books say you should do this. This is how I do it. That's kind of how I work it.
Wow, that's really. I mean, there's so many sort of currents at play there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really challenging to live that way. To go to a place at least 40 hours a week, and certainly when I was in management, it was more than that. You don't ever leave the place, and when you do, you bring it home with you, right?
Yeah.
But
so I mean, I have a wondering, and I want to see if I want to make sure that I say it in a cool way. It's that, so having like become a vegetarian towards vegan, being introduced to it as a philosophy by Dick Gregory, was there any sense of like the white medical establishment is a little bit clueless and we need to take care of ourselves better? Like, like there's this whole gap, like white people don't know about Dr. Sebi, and like there's entire like lore in the Black community around natural health and sort of distrusting white medicine. I'm wondering, did any of that play into this?
Some. Yeah, for me personally, yes, some. And I didn't even look at it so much as a black and white thing. For me, it was a Western versus Eastern, or allopathic versus non-allopathic.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a big chasm for someone working in healthcare.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yeah. Gratefully, I don't really have to work in standard American healthcare industry too much these days. I'm like semi-retired, and I get to do my own thing, which is beautiful. Because it's a big chasm. It's very challenging to, for instance, I do believe there is a place in the world for vaccines, right? Mm-hmm. Certainly, I was a kid, like you were a kid. I got my smallpox shot. I had the big, spot on my arm. I did the polio vaccine on sugar cubes when I was a kid. In nursing school, I had to get my hepatitis B vaccine. So I believe there's a place for vaccines, right? I was also managing a clinic when H1N1 came through. And it was a public health clinic.
This was like 2009?
Yeah, right after Obama came in, 2009.
Yeah.
And I remember having to set up how is this patient flow going to go through here for 3 weeks while we try and vaccinate everybody in the county that we were in, or at least in the, whoever came. We were vaccinating whoever came. And at that time, there was a big, some fear around, is this vaccine going to cause autism, or could it harm an unborn child? And I remember at one point having a husband and wife come in, and the wife was pregnant, obviously pregnant. She was showing. Woo! We have a beehive in our backyard, and the bees are coming to talk to me periodically. But anyway, so this husband and wife team came in, and the wife is pregnant, and the husband was like, I think we need to get this vaccine. I'm just really nervous. What would you say? Would you say that she should get the vaccine too? There were warnings out about pregnant women and the possibility of it causing some sort of impact on the fetus, and but it still was recommended that pregnant women get the vaccine. Let me tell you how tough a position that is to be in. I personally did not take the vaccine for H1N1, and I personally decline flu vaccines as often as I can.
Yeah.
But for this gentleman to ask me, should I take the vaccine? Should my wife take the vaccine? And all I could tell him was, the recommendation is that your wife take the vaccine. Mm-hmm. It is your personal decision, but the recommendation is that she got it.
Right. And you couldn't say to them, here's what we know, because there wasn't anything that we knew, because it
No.
was such a rush job. And so that at that point, everyone sort of falls back on their philosophy in the absence of evidence.
Right. Right. And you want to rely on the medical professionals that are speaking on those subjects, right? And I mean, we are finding ourselves in a very similar sort of position right now. The run up to what are they going to create for the COVID-19 vaccine is, it's kind of a similar thing.
Yeah.
How fast are they bringing it to market, and what kind of testing are we doing, and who's going to be recommended to get it, and who's going to be required to get it?
And it feels like a very different world now in terms of trusting the medical profession, in terms of having a consensus, or there may be a scientific consensus, but it doesn't seem like it once it gets refracted into the kaleidoscope of everyone's social media.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to believe now.
Yeah. And it's hard to do what you do, which I feel like I do as well, sort of straddling a medical world. Like, I love science, and I understand that science is one way of looking at the world.
Right.
And, that sometimes folk remedies and herbs are more appropriate and useful. And then to be both, in the face of something that seems unknown and scary, where there's no evidence, and a world in which everyone is telling me every sentence you speak is going to tell us what team you're on.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I've been straddling this fence a long time, 30 years, just about. So as a nurse, I'm bound by one code. Right. And as an adult human being, I may not cleave to that code in my own life.
Right. Well, so you said you're semi-retired, you're doing what you want to do now. So how did you get involved with the plant-based nutrition movement?
So I was having this terrible struggle, really, that bifurcation was kind of eating me alive. How do I continue to be true to myself and true to the medical profession? It was really very, very difficult. And given the way the industry runs, you have to be pretty much all in, or it just gets really, really difficult. I don't even know how to say that. Like, to maintain your sanity and your ethics, if you're not all in that medical industry field game, I don't even know what you call that, is very difficult. Oh, so I just got to the point where, for my own sanity, it would probably be better if I stepped away. So just before I stepped away, though, I was kind of, I don't know, I have this little game that I like to play, where I ask the universe for things that are highly probable, or at least possible, and see what lands in my lap, right? And it's literally a thing I do, right? So this one day I was saying, over a couple days, I said, I really need to get out of nursing in the way that I'm in. I just need to. It's not healthy for me or any living thing. So let me just see what else would I like to do. What I would like to do is manage a nonprofit. Okay, that's what I want. Please send me a nonprofit. Magical thinking. And I wound up going to a couple of meetups at a lady's house a few miles south of here in Illinois. And after the maybe second time I went to, it was a monthly meetup, and it was all vegan, whole food, no oil cooking meetup. And I said to the lady who hosted it, I said, you know what? I am to a point in my career where I need to make a change. I really appreciate what you're doing. I love what you're doing. If there's anything I can do to help you, you let me know. I am 100% available to you to do this. I am so tired. I'm up to here with, the standard medical practices and how things are taken care of. I just can't do it anymore. So you call me if you need anything. And I went to another couple of meetings, and at one point she said, I'd like to invite you to be on the board of this nonprofit called the Plant-Based Nutrition Movement. And I said, I'm in. Absolutely. What do you need from me? She said, send me your resume. Boom. Send her my resume, right? I got brought on. I was accepted on the board. And then I think it was the next month or something, the founder announced that he was stepping down. And I said, I would be willing to help keep this organization alive until we find an appropriate person.
Mm-hmm. At that point, had you been involved enough to know
no
its worth, or
no.
This is just?
I was in it 1 month. I think 1 month,
okay.
month and a half. I had no.
So this is still following the Trust the Universe plan. Gotcha. So
I asked two of the other board members, why don't we share it? I'll take 1/3, you take 1/3, you take 1/3, and together we can, really, really do this thing. We can,
Yeah. And were you were still working full time as a nurse at that point?
Yes.
So, okay. So this is not only it's not even a leap. It's just an added.
It's an added
on your shoulder.
Yeah. But I tend to like to spread myself pretty thin.
Okay.
It's my gig. Keep taking on more, try to over deliver by taking on a lot of things. I don't know what that is. Anyway, so the other two people declined. The two people I asked if they would job share with me, basically, declined. And the next meeting came up, and I was nominated to take the president CEO position. Just me.
Uh-huh.
And then, the vote went, and yes, I was voted in, and I'm good with that.
Uh-huh.
You when you ask and it gets dropped in your lap,
you say yes.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. Otherwise you block the next one. So I was like, yes, I'll take it. Yes, I'm happy. I love it. Love it.
Cool. So what are you guys doing now? Because it's, when I hear, like, there's so much going on online all the time, and I really love discovering organizations that are feet on the ground, that are bringing people together, and that's what you were doing. And now you're not, obviously. Right. Like, what are you looking to provide online that isn't there, or isn't enough of, or underserving people? So,
you got to love the COVID, right? It has given and taken away. It has been a powerful force for good and not and challenge, right? I'll say challenge and opportunity. So we Plant-Based Nutrition Movement, which is, if you want to look us up, it's pbnm.org, right? pbnm.org. Originally was conceived as very much hip to hip, elbow to elbow kind of an organization where we support people in their transition or in their learning about the value and power of whole food plant-based eating. Specifically, originally conceived to battle heart disease, right? Because it was created by a cardiologist, and by extension, of course, other chronic illnesses. Mm-hmm. So that's how it started. It also, so in that way, or to that end, let's say, we have support groups, we had cooking classes, we would have potlucks, we would have meetups, we did immersions, like Take Back Your Health type immersions, where we would have medical professionals come in and talk to a group of people who all had heart disease or all had diabetes, that type of thing. and get, do a full day of talking about how to manage that. And if you're diligent and paying attention, you could possibly eliminate a few medications, drop a few pounds, and feel better in a little while, right? So that was kind of our strength, was the hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand. We'll walk with you, guide you, teach you how to cook this stuff. We'll allow you to experiment with new ingredients and things like that. And then the COVID, right?
Right.
Which put it all kind of on hold. And we used the time to really re-examine what we wanted to do and how we wanted to deliver it and who was our target audience. What we found was that we had, when we were, active and all in person, our target market, or the people who took greatest advantage of our courses, were white females 55 years old and above.
Mm-hmm.
We pretty much had that target. That market was covered.
Okay.
One of the other sad but valuable gifts of everybody being home all at once with, corona fear and threat, was the whole set of things that happened around George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and all of that, So all of the civil unrest between, racial violence and all that stuff. And what that allowed was for our board, who basically is mostly white females 55 years old and above, right? Allowed everyone to really examine, who are we speaking to when we're sending out this message about the value of whole food plant-based eating. And what we came to, and it wasn't through any direction of mine, I happen to have a most wonderful board of directors. Lovely, beautiful people. And what we came to was that we really need to disseminate this message more widely. And it cannot be that we just stay comfortable with white females 55 years and old and above. We needed to get it to people who really are back to that same vulnerable population that I was working with as a nurse. Mm-hmm. So communities of color and disadvantaged communities of low socioeconomic status and things like that. So that's where we're kind of aiming now, is to just spread the message more widely and not be comfortable in that one small environment of people.
I can imagine, somebody from the PBNM asking the universe, like, send us someone who, we don't know who or who the group needs to be, but we need to expand. And you are the perfect person, given your life experience and your contacts and your medical understanding. When the moment came, when all of a sudden white people woke up to, oh, there's things that need to be done, and there's things that I can participate in to make this a more just world, that they didn't have to look around the room at a bunch of middle-aged white people and say,
right. Where do we find that?
we know what to do, right?
Right. We have an in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked well. I mean, that would be a lovely story if somebody was going like this at the same time I was going like this, and the universe said yes.
Well, it has to, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way your story works. If you're the piece, there has to be a puzzle somewhere,
I suppose, right? Yeah.
So what are you seeing now that COVID has turned us online, and you have PBNM has this renewed or more specific commitment to working with, you spoke at the beginning about, vulnerable populations. So working with more vulnerable, like, what are you discovering? It's kind of a new medium for a lot of people, the whole Zoom thing.
Yes.
What are some best practices that you're discovering for reaching vulnerable populations that have not been well served?
Yeah, so that's a really excellent question, right? So one of the challenges is that vulnerable populations may not have ready access to computers and unlimited Wi-Fi, right?
Mm.
Um, so that is definitely one of the things that we have to confront. We have definitely been improving, how not improving, increasing, augmenting our online presence, right? So adding more content to our website is one thing. We're doing more online classes, like cooking classes, demos, things like that, we're doing online. We're also reaching out to faith-based communities, even though there still is not a lot of robust attendance at churches, from what I can tell. You know, people are still kind of skittish, but we are reaching out to faith-based communities to see about the possibility of getting, you know, being able to speak with their parishioners and spread the word that way. I have worked also with, there's a cancer center not terrifically far from here, and their population was, for at least for this one class, was primarily Spanish speaking people from, you know, the Spanish diaspora, let's call it. So people from Cuba and Mexico and further Central America and, you know, Puerto Rico and things like that, and teach cooking classes with them, specifically related to, you know, building immunity and keeping yourself strong post cancer treatments, or even, you know, during cancer treatments, things like that. So that's kind of the path we're going. We've also had a chance.
Yeah, sorry. What's your strategy for partnering as opposed to preaching?
Well, you know, one thing that's really important is work with the group to develop the class. That's super important. I mean, that's an excellent point you're making there, Howard. You can't underestimate the importance of that or overestimate it either.
Say more, because I might have just said it by accident.
Okay, so as a public health nurse, I'll go back to my nursing stuff.
Go.
One of the things that's so super important when you're working with people is to make sure that they have some kind of investment and that they feel like they've helped create the thing that you're delivering, right? Otherwise, it comes off as patronizing and insulting. So we look at, you know, engaging the community and ask them, so what would you like to know? I have this whole life of information, right? And in the case of the Spanish speaking group in particular, you know, I can deliver it fairly well in some version of your native language, right? I'm not real good with Puerto Rican Spanish. I'm pretty good with Mexican Spanish, is kind of what I'm saying. Dialects can be different. And, you know, with just like keeping it very humble, very on the ground kind of activity. Ask, and the way I like to do it is ask people, so how do you use this ingredient when you're at home? Do you use this ingredient ever at home? Have you ever heard of this ingredient? Okay, so in Spanish, let's say we've got 3 different dialects or 4 different dialects in the room. What do you call this ingredient? So you call it maíz. You call it elote. You call it, you know, popcorn, whatever, you know. How do you call that? What do you call oranges? You know, so just engaging on that level and being super humble, super humble those are probably my best suggestions. Having people participate in the class. When we're talking about cooking, it's like, would you be willing to come up here and help me chop these? Okay, you saute that. I'll be over here measuring this. Here, I'll give it to you. I'll read the recipe. If you dump it in, or you read the recipe, I'll dump it in. You know, we do things like that.
So well, what about, there is like, when there is a knowledge gap, like, you know, that this is the healthy way to eat, and we talked about, the slave food, soul food from the South, and the, cheese and fried foods from, like, we know that like 3 generations ago, it was collards and black-eyed peas and corn, beans and rice. How do you, when the need to educate arises, how do you educate without patronizing or without making people ashamed of their culture?
Mm. That's a really good question. I guess really what I try to do is just go back. Okay, so in the case of slave food,
Mm-hmm.
I came from that, right? My
Mm-hmm.
mother was a serious pig feet and chitlin cooker.
Uh-huh.
Okay? She had that stuff nailed, and she was an excellent cook. I certainly ate that when I was growing up prior to age 15, right? And when I speak to people about that, let's say, African American people or people from the Caribbean, I also have Caribbean roots. It's really easy to talk about. Okay, so slave owners were not really trying to give good quality food to the slaves. They gave the quality of food that they wouldn't give their dog. We don't have to eat like that anymore. And if we look at, we can easily look at the set of diseases and illnesses that impact communities of color. And it's this very often the same diseases that impact any other community, by the way, right? It's the same stuff.
Right.
It just seems to impact communities of color maybe more quickly and more brutally, right? And just talking like that, I have not really had a problem, having people, walk with me. Let's walk through this. Haven't had a problem, Now, that doesn't mean that people will automatically switch off and stop eating like that. Maybe it's a certain amount of not being attached to the outcome, because people go at it at their own pace, and some people never switch, even with the knowledge, even having, learned. Food is a very sensitive, personal, and emotionally charged subject and reality. If somebody, when I was 10, told me that my mother was trying to poison me every time she gave me pig feed, I probably would have fought back.
Yeah.
But so people come at it how they come at it. I think probably the best thing is no attachment to the outcome. Commitment that people have health and vitality and live long, productive lives without burden of disease, but no attachment.
And do you find it helps to have the liaison to those communities look and sound like those communities?
Oh, it's critical. Yeah, that's critical. Yeah. It is usually wrought for failure if somebody, and I hate to say it like this, but this is our reality, right? If a Caucasian person walks into a community of color, there's an immediate sense of distrust, right? And that's probably coming from both directions, let's say. And that sense of distrust can be really detrimental, excuse me, really detrimental to the outcome of the project. So it's super helpful to have somebody who at least has similarity in background, similarity in appearance to the culture that you're working with.
Yeah. So does PBNM have any lessons for the broader plant-based community about representation?
Wow. Yeah, I would say so. I think in a lot of areas, whole food plant-based eating has been championed by, the Caucasian community. the white community, right? It's been taken on, and it's, I don't know. It's almost like, you've probably heard it too. Like people say it's almost elitist,
Uh-huh.
And the whole, animal rights movement is kind of, that same group of people, maybe a little bit younger, elitist, young white kids, who fight for that stuff, even though that's not entirely true, right?
Right. People who don't have their own problems.
Oh yeah,
Right.
it kind of becomes a first world issue,
Right?
Which it really kind of is, because in other parts of the world, people just want to eat, right? And they don't
Right.
get to say, "I'm not eating that." They just want to eat. But in America and in places where, I'll say first world countries, where we have those kind of choices and we can make those kind of statements, it would be great to reach out and work with people of all colors and let's say all nations, all colors, all flavors, all shapes, all sizes, all languages, just, reach out. It shouldn't be a racial thing. Now, there certainly are. I read a statistic or a statement not long ago that African Americans are like fastest growing in the plant-based community, plant-based populations, which I'm really grateful to hear. It's one of the ways. It's one of the ways to keep ourselves healthy, and that's everybody. It really does. It's not a color thing. It's just not a color thing. It's just a human body thing. It's what we need to do.
Right. Although in terms of the messaging, like when I started, becoming vocal as a plant-based advocate, I believed that, I had science and, and I didn't have a racist bone in my body.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Right. Right. Which, to a certain extent, like I didn't bear anyone any ill will. And I wasn't cognizant of all the biases that I had accumulated. And the way I would speak was, I would say, was very condescending around, well, you should know that, if people eat this way, that will be, that we will have more justice. And it wasn't a ground up thing. It was, it was whatever the racist, classist version of mansplaining is.
Yes.
It's like, I've discovered the truth, and color shouldn't matter because I'm really smart.
Right. Got it.
You know how many friends I made doing
probably
that.
a lot, huh?
Yeah. Right. So, and I'm seeing it now in terms of the importance of diversity in veg fests, diversity on plant-based panels, in medical conferences. Just that I can't carry water everywhere water needs to be carried.
Right. That's right.
I'm not the person to do it.
Right. Well put. Well put. I wonder too, and so that comes from both ends, right? So not only if we look around, not only are there people of other flavors, shapes, sizes, colors, nationalities, and languages that actually live this life, right? But the people who put these conferences together, I think also have their eyes open, similar to the way my board has their eyes open now. Okay, we can't just look for people that look like us and ignore everyone that doesn't, right? We have to consciously bring other people in. I love what you said. You can't carry water to everybody that needs water. That's so beautiful. Yeah, exactly. Not everybody will drink from your cup, right?
Right. Yeah, and maybe this is a transitional phase of the human experience, but it's forcing a lot of clueless, well-meaning white liberals to acknowledge that color is a thing.
Yeah.
For the time being.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Yep. We need it. It's time.
Yeah.
We're overdue.
Yeah, not to drag us too far, but there's a story today, wasn't there, in Kenosha?
Yes, there was.
Is that near you?
Yeah, a few miles north.
I mean, like this.
Crazy, crazy. Nobody hears of Kenosha. Nobody. You know what? I just realized I've been hearing it's gonna change my name.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. Yeah, so last night there was an incident, and of course, we don't know all the details. We probably never will know all the details. But there was, from what I understand, two women in some sort of an altercation, and these are African American people. A man stepped in to try and, I don't know, break up the fight is the story that's in the news right now. And at some point, the police were called. And at some point, and there's viral video available for people to watch if they want to see it. The gentleman who was trying to break up the fight, at some point, the police were confronting him, and he turned and started to walk away. And I understand he was tased once. Maybe the taser didn't work, or it just caused him to keep walking away. I don't know. And he went to go get in his car, and a police officer fired at point blank range 7 shots into his back, from what I understand. The man's children were in the car and watched their father get killed like that. And that sparked, between the video going viral and people right there watching it firsthand and all that, it sparked quite the little riot down in downtown Kenosha. Car lot, cars burned, and empty buildings set on fire, and there's all kinds of stuff. We had a curfew imposed last night. I think it was, everybody was supposed to settle down and be out of the way by 7 or 8 o'clock, and it went till 6 o'clock this morning. Yeah, a mess.
Yeah,
Quite
and
mess.
it's and I want to again turn to you. You've spent 30 years, outlasting the medical system, the way you outlasted your mother. How do we outlast this? And it's just like you fatigue, like another.
Yeah.
How do you outlast?
Wow. So Howard, you ask some really wonderful questions. I so appreciate your approach. So
well, when you come across a well with clear, pure water, you keep pulling on the bucket. So it's a testament to the conversation that you're contributing to.
Thank you. This is really great. So, I have reached the age, which I never thought I would ever say this. I've reached the age where I've seen enough. I can look back over my years. So I was born in 1960, and all that happened in 1964 and 65 and 68 and 70 and 75 and all those stuff is formed who I am, right? So I am really, how's that? Was that a Tom Petty song? I was born a rebel. I think that's me. And I guess it really just requires holding on to your ethics, holding on to your morals, and just standing and carrying the banner for what's right. And one of the things that's so confusing now, like I said before, you don't know what to believe. So there's what comes across the news, and I have great respect for journalists. However, I think there is huge pressure given the news cycle. This is not earth-shattering what I'm going to say, but there's huge pressure on news outlets and journalists to get the stories out 24 hours a day. I mean, that stuff doesn't stop, right? So you have to be really super careful about what we listen to and what we watch and what we take on as being true. Every story that I read these days, I go back and try and research where to come from, who's got investment in making it look this way, what kind of inflammatory language is being used, how much hyperbole is in there. Because when we were kids, Howard, journalists didn't talk like this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the language was at least supposed to sound neutral. It was supposed to sound objective, right? That doesn't happen in a lot of cases anymore. There's a lot of hyperbole and inflammatory stuff and outright bias and craziness in the news these days. So how do we outlast it? You know, fighting for what we believe is right, reaching out to people who don't look like us, trying to, you know, bring somebody else, or I go with you, you know, understand it from another point of view. So, okay, sidebar. My husband, just like I was born a rebel, my husband was born a rebel and then like somehow transformed himself into some sort of conservative person. Okay.
Okay.
So we have rather heated conversations about his point of view versus my point of view. And, you know, somewhere in the middle is the truth, I guess. But even being willing to have those conversations and not brand somebody as, you know, you're crazy, you're a lunatic, I don't have to listen to you, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, just being willing, open to the conversation and educating yourself in all kinds of ways. I think that's the only way around it, you know. One of the things about in medicine is, you know, in nursing, do no harm. You know, that's not always easy, but I try to carry that. You know, just do no harm. Try not to take somebody out at the kneecaps if I don't have to. You know? It's something. This is quite a wild time. You know, as they say, unprecedented.
Yeah.
And that's a nice way to put it. It's wild time.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned Tom Petty,
Yes.
I want to end by asking you a question that I've started doing this, and I find it people really like it makes them happy to answer it and for other people to hear it.
Okay.
What's some music that you're listening to these days, or that you like that other people don't know, or you know, that a lot of people wouldn't be familiar with? What would you like to share?
Wow. Okay. So. Actually, this is so funny. Okay, so I'm going to just like go back a little bit.
Okay.
I have always loved Bob Marley. Always. Always. This is why I wear my hair in dreadlocks, to be honest, because I love Bob Marley. Well, that's how it started anyway. I love Krishna Das. Love that, you know, chanting. That is just soul food, honestly. Those are my go-tos when I just need like, bring it down, you know. I also will listen to Hang Drum.
Hang Drum?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not familiar.
Yeah. As very, you know, repetitive and sort of meditative kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then classical music. I tend these days, honestly, I tend to listen to music that doesn't have any words, or words that I can't understand. It's got to be in a language that I don't speak, so I don't understand the words. So that's one reason of many that I like Krishna Das music. I understand some of it only because I've been told what the Sanskrit is. But I don't really understand Sanskrit. Yeah, because I don't, so much of music with words, it just makes me very sad. I can't.
Right.
Can't listen to it. So,
all right. So Bob Marley, Kristen Dust, and Hang Drum. I'll put up links. I'll find a good YouTube link for each of them, and people can go when they're looking for sort of peace and transcendence.
Yeah, Bob Marley absolutely would be like Three Little Birds or No Woman, No Cry.
Hi. So before we go, how can people find you? Can they people make donations to PBNM? How can they be in touch?
Oh, absolutely. So PBNM, we have a website where you are certainly welcome and encouraged, invited to donate. That's pbnm.org. I also have my own website, which I'll give you one name. It actually has two names. I'm in the process of changing the name, but the one that's probably easiest to get through on would be balanceforwardhealthandwellness.com.
Balance forward
health and
health
wellness.
health and wellness.com.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put a link for those who want to check out the show notes.
Yeah, that would be great. And both of those websites, we have recipes and blogs and places where people can ask questions and get in touch.
Meryl Fury, I've had such a good time getting to know you and talking to you, and thank you so much for the work you do with PBNM and elsewhere in the world, and for taking the time today.
Well, thank you so much, Howard. This has just been a pleasure, really, really. And thank you for doing the work you do, getting the word out, keeping the word going. Love that.
All right, beautiful. Someday maybe we'll meet.
That would be good.
I'd like that. All right, take care.
To come to Wisconsin anytime.
Right on. You have plant-based cheese, right?
We do.
Good.
And brats.
Awesome. All right, take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. I hope you had as much fun as I did with that podcast episode. If you want to watch the video or check out the links or look at the show notes, you can do so at plantyourself.com/429. If you'd like to support the mission of the show, you can become a patron over at plantyourself.com/gift. You can subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you consume audio. What else can you do? You can share this episode, let other people know. Send an email saying, hey, I just listened to a really good podcast. I think you'll enjoy this conversation. Send it to one person. If everybody who listens did that, I would. Drum roll for my math skills, please. Double my listenership. And I know this isn't, I'm not doing this for fame or fortune, but there is something really nice about knowing that I'm reaching a large enough audience to be able to be interesting to people who only agree to go on podcasts with a certain threshold. So that's something that frustrates me sometimes, that people will say, well, how many listeners do you have? And I'll say the number. And they'll say, well, no, I only go on podcasts where they reach, 500,000 a week or 50,000 a week. And I'm not near there. So if you help me get there, I can get some of those people. What else is going on? Garden news, harvested the grapes. So I got about a quart. In past years, when I harvested grapes, which the last time was, I think, 3 years ago, I was getting buckets, 5-gallon buckets, and we got a quart. So I think what's happening is the birds are getting them, which I can live with. The birds provide many valuable services in our yard, and they sing real pretty. But I think I want to put a little bit of the netting up to see if we can't just get a few more next year. They're delicious. They're very, very sweet, almost too sweet. They each have 3 pits and a very, very leathery, thick skin. So, not your picnic seedless grapes, but nonetheless amazing. We have planted lots of baby greens, which I'm trying not to step on because I don't always recognize them. So as I pull out the last of the tomato plants and we pull out the flax, which my wife is now starting to learn how to weave into cordage, which is really, really cool. So hopefully we'll have, chard and kale within the next month or so. What else is going on? I want to, the running news, right? So this week I'm taking off from running. I went on Sunday planning to do a brisk 6-miler because it was beautiful, cool, breezy. And I ended up walking. I was just exhausted. And I talked to Josh and he agreed, I'm just going to take the week off. So I'm doing like 3 to 4 miles of walking in the morning. So an hour to an hour and a half, and getting lots of sleep, eating really clean. Yesterday I fasted. And on Saturday, I'll go back to Ultimate Frisbee practice and see if I just needed to recharge those batteries. So I'll let you know. Maybe this is a good idea, maybe it isn't. But, as Josh often says, do something even if it's wrong and you will learn from it. So time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use Sabali Dawn, the Dance of Peace, as the theme music for this show. Check out willridenauer.com for more of his beautiful West African Kora music. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons. Let me start with Teresa Koppel, Julian Watkins, Breed O'Connell, Sharon Hirschman, Linda Ayat, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzin-Wa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, and Carolyn Jensen as a random sampling. And then the last bunch: Olga Sidorowska, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Nayak, Erica Piedra, and Danielle Roberts for your generous support of the podcast. If your name was not read and you would like it to be, and you'd like to support the show, again, plantyourself.com/gift. Now would be a really good time. All right, that's it for today. As always, be well, my friends. All right, time for thanks. Thanks to Will Ridenauer for allowing me to use his beautiful song Sabali Dawn, the Dance of Peace. You can find more of Will's music at his website, willridenauer.com. And of course, thanks to all of you Plant Yourself podcast patrons: Kim Harrison, Lynn McClellan, Anthony Disson, Brittany Porter, Dominic Maurer, Barbara Whitney, Tammy Black, Amy Good, Amanda Hatherley, Mary Jane Wheeler, Ellen Kennelly, Mr. Cobb, Rachel Behrens, Christine Nielsen, Tina Sharp, Tina Ahern, Jennifer Volkanovsky, David Bizek, The Mysterious, Michelle X, Elspeth Feldman, Leah Stoller, Alan Christensen, Colleen Peck, Michelle Landry, Josina, Sarah Durkis, Rhymes with Circus, Kelly Cameron, Wayne Pedersen, Janet Selby, hi Janet, Claire Adams, Tom Franzek, Jeanette Benham, Gil Lacert, David Donahue, Blair Cyber, Dorona Vizov, Gio and Carolyn Argentati, Jody Friesen, Ruth Ann Funderburg, Misha Rosen, Michael Warbeck, The Equally Mysterious, Tracy Z, Aviva Lael, Alicia Lemus, Rebecca Hughes, Val Linneman, Rhymes with Cinnamon, Nick Harper, Martha Bergner, Susan Ahmad, Nolly Levine, The Inscrutable Harry R., Susan Laverty, The Panda Vegan, Craig Kovic, Adam Sharf, Karen Burry, Heather Morgan, Kelly Machia, Deanne Norton, Bonnie Lynch at Plant Happy Oregon, Sabina Kurtzels, Nigel Davies, Marion Blum, Teresa Coble, Julian Rodkins, Breed O'Connell, Shannon Hirschman, Linda Ayat, Holm Hedegaard, Isa Tuzin-Wa, Connie Hainline, Aaron Greer, Alicia Davis, Heather O'Connor, Carolyn Jensen, Sherry Orlikoski of Plant Powered for Health, Karen Smith, Scott Morani, Karen Jo Crabtree, Tanya Lewis, Kirby Burton, Teresa Carell, Kevin McCauley, Elizabeth Rothschild, Ann Jesse, Cheryl Dwyer, Jenny Hazelton, Valerie Peltier, Peter W. Evans, Colleen Harrison, Justin Divich, Joshua Summermeyer, Dennis Bird, Darby Kelly, Lori Fanny, Linnea Lundquist, Valerie Hummel, Emily Iaconelli, Levy Wallach, Rosamund McAtee, Dan Picorni, Stephen Lehman, Patty DiMartino, Mike and Donna Kartz, Deanne Bishop, Bill Brielf, Gunter Schmidt, Marjorie Lewis, Kelly Molden, Trish Adams, Ian Kramer, Nancy Sheldon, Lindsay Bayshore, Gunmarie Hagen, Tracy Gullidge, Laura Heaton, Meg from Mama Says, Rochelle Kennedy, Diana Goldman, Stacey Stokes, Ben Savage, Michael Kay, Holly Butler, David Hughes, Connie Rogers, Claire England, Sally Robertson, Paran Ganshi, Amy Daly, Brian Tourville, Mark Jeffrey Johnson, Josie Dempsey, Karen Schmidt, Pamela Hayden, Emily Perryman, Olga Sidorowska, Allison Corbett, Richard Stone, Lauren Vaught of Edible Musings, Aaron Hasty, Sean Owen, Sagar Nayak, Erica Piedra, Danielle Roberts, and Michael Lushton for your generous support of the podcast. That's it for now. As always, be well, my friends.